Dirty Boy, the manuscript you just found stashed inside a chest freezer in the burnt-out sex dungeon. You will soon wish you were not reading Dirty Boy, that you had left well alone, kept away from the story, let destiny here flourish only for the others, the many down here and the few who remain on the surface. Chapter 1, The Wyvern Capture. When another blurred and smeary humanoid figure appeared on the front page of the Hardmoor Echo, as with many of the local folk, a sensation more titillation than fear will have shivered through you. He was back to creep the overhung lanes and unpeopled spaces of our dying town, back to enjoy the freedoms of the night and the unlit streets as you would if you were him. You will have assumed our prowler a he, not a she, an it or a they. You supposed only one and not a horde, no conspiracy of leathery intruders. News of this latest sighting hit the local press 2 days after the image had already gone viral online, 3 since the rains died down, and 4 from when Emily Key, a 34-year-old pharmacist latterly of this parish, was accosted in the car park behind the Wyvern chemist. According to the account later given to Hardmoor detectives by her lodger, Amira Castry, when she had arrived home from an after-work drink that Friday night, Amira had found Emily in a distressed state. Emily had, she insisted, been visited by Hardmoor's storied angel of death, the legendary Black Lamia, the one who whispers names. Straight away, Amira told Emily she must have been pranked by some sad sicko in need of help, a danger more to himself than others. After all, there are still men in Hardmoor, restless, rejected men with festered resentments and catastrophized grudges, themselves case studies in how lives can be blighted by addiction and anger, boredom and lust, who if street mutters snitch on a dirty deviant or blatant fiddle about, a flacker mash type hanging around the kiddies' play area or ladies' washroom, these men of Hardmoor are quite capable of fetching the tar and the feathers, the hammer, the nails and the noose. Some of you may or may not know had dreamed of stringing up the Hardmoor gimp for months. Over warm flat pints, slumped on 3-legged stools and brooding at saloon bars during dead afternoons, they had squandered their spare time working out a likely secluded site, somewhere to do it, the loneliest tree, a disused pylon or flagpole out in the edgelands of Hardmoor, the little town close to nowhere they still call the Devil's Compass. You may or may not be one of these dreamers yourself. You may or may not yourself have needed a project to keep you on point, keep you out of trouble here. The photo first appeared on the local message board Hardmoor Hub. Emily had taken it as she'd scrambled into her car. In this much-shared image, he approaches the rear of her hatchback, tall, kink-waisted and lithe, his legs visible to the lower shin are lean and muscular. His spindly arms appear to hang a little lower than you would expect. It had rained for a month. It was raining that evening. In the photo, the tarmac behind him resembles a screen of grey mist. He materialises backlit by sodium lamps mounted on the side wall of a brick building we straight away recognise as the chemist's on Hardmoor High Street. Glare streaks his jet black shoulders and the pinched ridge at his mask's crown. His arms dangle at his sides in a way that suggests a wire pulls him from above. How he cups his palms makes him appear even more mannequin or puppet-like. He may have seemed to you like he has been described by others as both controlled and controlling, simultaneously threat and victim. He may or may not have genitals. He may or may not have a mind. The crossed electric blue strips, the electric X's over the mask's eye slits, are hidden by a bristling sheen, the photo taken in a panicked haste. Only the merest glimpse of the zippered mouth is discernible. You would have needed to have seen the earlier images to know it was there, that gash of a grin. You, though, have seen all the pictures since they started to appear 3 years ago. You may or may not have cut them out, collected them in a file or scrapbook. No doubt you leaned in when you first saw this latest vision of our tentative boy, maybe even ran your fingertip across his otherwise featureless face in the newsprint. It is unclear whether he has paused or is still taking steps towards her. He is, of course, covered in form-fitting black leather. Unless that is, as Emily thought, this was no sword suit. This was his skin. She too will have seen images of him before. Everyone here has. Maybe you've even seen him out and about yourself. Perhaps you even joined the parties who went out looking for him to clean our streets, reclaim the night. Maybe you caught sight of him when you were out alone on solo reconnaissance, patrol, Hardmore's street-level superhero, our daredevil, our Moon Knight, stalking our Night Stalker. Since he first popped up 3 years ago, many here claim to have seen the Hardmore Gimp, in the streets, in the woods, gardens and patios, by the lake, in the rushes there, the escarpment, our man in leather, our man in the dark. Emily must have been terrified. You may or may not know that news of the Gimp's return first surfaced on the community message board Hardmore Hub 2 days after his reappearance in the car park of the Wyvern Chemist. Titled Miss Me, the photo was uploaded by a user called Tropic of Leatherhead. Leatherhead is presumed not to be an alias of Emily Key, so how the photo entered the public domain is still a matter of debate. A new GIMP post proved something of a disruptor to the dozens about the persistence of cloudburst and downpour, the localised flooding, the encircling of Hardmore by rising waters, that the old town felt like a fort collapsing into a moat alive with rapidly evolving cryptosporidium and possibly self-aware E. coli, the number of children sick with fever and vomiting up worms, multiple accounts of subsidence and mudslides, the 3 people who were drowned in mud and floodwater, school runs that resembled the plot of the 1978-2000 AD Judge Dredd story The Cursed Earth, or the 1969 science fiction novel by Roger Zelazny, Damnation Alley, the Just Eat blackout, repeat complaints about deliver poo, asylum seekers allegedly engaged in flagrant mudlarking, deterioration of the quality of fresh foodstuff, Greggs and KFC running out of their shit, and the possibility of resulting famine, power outages, burst riverbanks and sewer pipes, fallen trees, the overwhelmed reservoir at Tongue's End, the red frog spawn monster some kids say they saw, swarms of eels threading through the 2-foot-deep diluted excrement that had inundated unwisely situated cash grab backhander housing developments on former floodplains in edgelands like Willow Bend and Birch Point. The rafts of interwoven dead eels now sighted floating in various channels, waterways and bloated ponds that prompted several folk of our manor to quote from the book of Genesis, "I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made." Against this backdrop, the reappearance of the Gimp to some felt like the return of Hardmore's weird past. Someone from its distinct folklore, its lake ghost, its lonely one, that some things never change, the past is rooted, the past is an evil now returning in Sturm and Drang, in storm and stress, thunder and lightning, the black demon rises, the black Lamia, the insatiable devourer of souls, the one who whispers names. To others, the Gimp was a signal that life would continue. The Gimp is our totem, our good luck. The leather friend foreshadows the end of rains. If a user called Hamble's Eye posted, the more I see of this, the more I think about those stories about the Lamia of Lake Mott, and that we are now cut off from the rest of England with this creature from the Black Lagoon on the loose. A user called Jar Jar Abrams would respond with, "Gimp-phobic. It's just someone being who they really are and loving their Gimp joy. They won't hurt anyone. You obviously don't know anything about Gimps and Gimphood and are clearly a hater." Someone called Arnold Lane's Strange Hobby would then interject with a list of failing and floundering agencies responsible for planning climate infrastructure and locking up and castrating weirdos in Hardmore, and someone hiding behind the moniker Cucumber Wumba would remind the hub that Gimp or no Gimp, there was no work now in Hardmore beyond wiping the arses of the zombie generation of selfish, servile and educationally subnormal flag shaggers and pricks who on their watch allowed wire pullers, libertarian psychopaths and donators to a now extinct political plot against talent and merit, to inflict for short-term profit and planet looting big burn heat waves, Old Testament-style deluges, and storms with pretty girls' names on those of us now threatened by surging brown water and that which we thought we had passed, flushed out of sight. Discussion would soon descend into a pub car park fight between those on the side of science and those enthralled to superstition, nostalgia, and myth. I expect you took a position between these schools when you first encountered in the echo the image of him all smeary and leathery, or took a stance more commensurate with your stirrings. You may have only read about the Hardmoor Gimp in the Echo and the Herald, but the Hub has been at the forefront of logging and archiving Gimp encounters since the last days of the Great Disorder, the year of fear. That time we all spent cooped up indoors, terrified of the violet spores, what they could do to your mind, frightened for our sanity. The whole world shut down for a year and everyone sat in isolated huddles, and for what felt like all time. Even when the spores mysteriously vanished, they left behind abandoned towns and 13% of the global population missing, presumed drifted, presumed dead. Maybe this had an effect on our boy. Maybe he lay awake all night during those dread months, fantasizing about the loving wrap of the suit, the sky, the dark alleyways and ring roads, and fear in the eyes of women he suddenly loved. Who knows? The first report of a Gimp scampering amok in the area appeared on Hardmoor Hub 3 days before quarantine ended, with a Susanna Still Alive posting that she had seen a dark, shiny man looking up at her from her back garden. She had just put her kids to bed and was pulling the curtains when she saw him. He had something in his mouth that glinted in the moonlight, she wrote. Had anyone else seen anyone like this? Of course, in the circumstances, no one really took this seriously, assuming that one of either Susanna Still Alive or Dark and Shiny had breathed in spores and were on their way to the drift. Perhaps one of her kids had opened a window out of sheer willfulness and boredom and let in the deadly specks, and now they were all tripping their final balls, Susanna Still Alive and her family. Or maybe the seclusion had finally got to someone with exotic tastes, who had slipped on that family heirloom fetish suit that had hung in the attic for generations, breathed in the spore-laden air, invited the purple haze and drifted free, going out in the style he had wished to live, when he still wanted to persist with this world of Hardmoor, this grain of sand, this devil's compass. Maybe. Even so, this was the beginning, not a one-off thing. Things did not die down with the dispersal of the spores and the end of restrictions. 3 weeks later, a user wine mum reported a tall man in a leather jumpsuit who walked like a robot in Sedge Lane. Then a catgirl tights had been waiting in her car in her garage, and as the electric gate rose, a man in black rubber was standing on her driveway. In broad daylight this time, he ran off when she sounded her horn. When a Ball's Blood Hillary reported a similar leathery man had followed her along Kite's Way, making a hissing noise, Hub regulars connected the events and identified a recurring phenomena. The urban myth phase of the Hardmoor Gimp panic began. All these women were assumed to be flaky, lying, attention seekers, bored, desperate, TikTok or social media hoaxers, or fucked up by the disorder in some way. The Gimp was a consensual and collective hallucination. The Gimp was their wish. If not, there was a nonce or nutter on a bit of a spree. Even some apprehensively mentioned the Black Lamia of Lake Mott. There was no activity for a year. Then the following autumn, the Gimp was sighted in the fields west of the old abandoned farm at Witherton Crop, at the Hag's Back Hill and at Ather Pike. The first distributed photograph was taken on the towpath behind the Curate's Egg pub on Peat Street by dog-like Sparky, aka Perry Mapp, an expert in the installation and maintenance of carburettors. He had managed to talk Larder Raven, one of the barmaids, into coming down to the river with him, where he would show her something in the sky he thought would beguile her, a ring around a red planet, a star that glints like diamonds, some bollocks like that. They were kissing when she spooked. A man was standing on the towpath watching them, a man dog-like, later described as a butt plug in human form. Dog-like took a photo of a phone shot of the gimp in his marionette pose, rigid arms, rigid legs, hands cupped low at thigh height, zipper mouth silvery in the dusk. When Lada wet herself with fear, Dog-like ran at the gimp, who vanished into the trees on the bank, the bushes and the undergrowth, the swaddling darkness up there merging with the suit. Dog-like, worried about Lada, now he'd lost sight on our tentative boy, turned back. When the picture was posted to Hardmore Hub, it confirmed all those earlier sightings reported by Susanna Still Alive, Wine Mum and Bull's Blood Hillary, etc. When it appeared a few days later on the front page of the Echo, the legend of the Hardmore Gimp was born. Thank you very much.